Hello, welcome to Thoughts That Move. This episode is about social and racial justice art. My name is Stephanie Patrick. Today, our group is a collection of artists who will discuss if and or how racial justice is incorporated into their artistic expression and the license that Black artists need to explore their own creative voices and ideas. We have Chinwe Okorie, who is a Nigerian-born writer, director, and editor in Austin, Texas. At age 6, she immigrated to the United States and watched her first film, Titanic. It was then that her love affair with cinema began. In college, her student-run TV station, Topper TV, received the Rising Star Award, and Study Breaks magazine featured Chinwe as their next big thing in 2014. After college, Chinwe went on to write, direct, and edit short films, including her most recent film, Love Bites, which is currently distributed by Issa Rae Presents. In 2021, Chinwe was nominated for Best Austin Filmmaker, along with Richard Linklater and Robert Rodriguez. Andre Bradford, aka S.E. Says, is an Austin-based slam poet who has been performing slam poetry since 2013. He's toured and featured at venues and universities across the country, been featured in the Huffington Post, The Edge Radio, The Culture Trip, and Blavity. He is a 2-time Austin Poetry Slam champion, a 3-time Texas Grand Slam finalist, and was a member of the 2015 National Championship team. His poetry covers topics ranging from being mixed race, gun control and mental health awareness, to never settling in relationships. Slam poetry is an art form he loves due to its raw vulnerability and its ability to cultivate transparency and dialogues into many different walks of life. Alyssa Dillard is a performance artist and director from Texas and a master's graduate of the Academy of Performing Arts in Prague theater faculty. Currently based in Prague, she creates site-specific performances that mix different artistic elements, including music, dance, theater, and installations. Her work is an exploration of cultural mixtures and miscommunications, social interactions, viewership, and the intimacy between ourselves and those around us who are searching for ways to create connections through our differences. She has performed at festivals in Germany, Czech Republic, and the United States. She looks forward to continuing her work in Italy, Slovenia, and Spain in the future. Amber Wilson, stage name Vanna Black, is a spoken word artist, performer, author, and content creator, originally from New Orleans, Louisiana. Amber began performing in 2010 and has competed in competitions with Austin Poetry Slam since 2016, where her team ranked top 10 for 2017 and 2018. Amber also has done multiple collaborations with Early Era Collective, which has allowed her to see her words come to life through movement. She assists in monthly poetry workshops for various schools in the Dallas ISD area through their Bright Idea program. Amber believes in the transformative element that art provides for both the audience and artists. And those are our guests today. Thank you all for being here. I'm so happy to have you here. So let's just go ahead and jump right into our conversation. Do you think Black artists are expected to create art with messages supporting racial justice? And if so, who is it for?
I feel like our Black artists are expected to, even though that may not always be our goal, but it isn't so much for us unless it's more personal, and I can speak for myself. I feel like when I do things like that in my artwork, it's more to bring awareness to my audience.
I don't know if it's necessarily expected of us, but I would say that from my experience, people aren't surprised if I get on stage and do a poem about racism. In my experience, it's more like a surprise if I get on stage and I do a poem that's not about race. And that may just speak to kind of the culture of maybe Austin specifically or America currently. Just that, you know, if there's a person of color that gets on some kind of platform at all, chances are they may be speaking about some kind of systemic something or personal something or social justice issue. I don't want to say that artists of color have to produce art about social justice, but I do think it's important to recognize that chances are the audience that you are giving this art to or performing this art for will view it from that lens, even if what you are presenting to them has nothing to do with social justice. They may just naturally associate the color of your skin with some kind of issue. And I do think it's important to take that into account.
I definitely think that there's an expectation and an assumption that everything you do as a person of color or quote unquote marginalized group that is through the lens of social justice or speaking to your like the systematic oppression of your community. I think that's the assumption. I tend to want to rebel against that so much because of that assumption. Is almost like feeling like when you're the new kid, especially the new Black kid, and then everyone in the race assume that, oh, you're going to be the one playing basketball. You're the one who's going to be joining our track team. And I don't like that. So that makes me want to do the opposite of what they're expecting. For instance, my track teacher just assumed that I'm going to go into the long distance and sprints and whatever. And I was like, no, I'm just going to work on the throw team because you're assuming that I'm going to be really good at it. And I actually am not a good runner too. So I learned, like, because of being a rebel, I've learned that I was a really good thrower out of all of it. So I think there is an assumption that we are making art through social justice, but I think we need to challenge ourselves, the audience and the artists to challenge themselves to like do the opposite of what people are assuming.
For me, I really find myself in situations a lot of the time where, especially living abroad, people expect you to illustrate something because they don't understand it. But like, people aren't putting in the effort to understand it in the first place because they could read a book or watch something themselves. And I want to deny people the pleasure of illustrative performance. Like, why am I going to illustrate something to you for the sake of you checking it off of a list, or being like, I'm going to see this Black person tell me about how hard it is being Black in America. It's like, even living here, people will say, isn't America, like, you're from the South, isn't it less racist? Isn't it more racist than here? Do you think here is less racist than the South? And I'm always like, no. And I had a conversation yesterday with someone who's a good friend of mine, and I'm really having an issue with institutions in Europe, like how I want to work with them. And he didn't understand that I was intentionally not doing things in a specific way. And I was like, I'm not making theater like this. I'm making it this way because this is how I want to do it. And I reserve the right to do it however I want because everyone else does. And it's not my job to cater to this institution so they feel happy. Like, they're just going to use me, and then they'll use me to say that they have done integration and diversity work. And what am I going to get out of it? Like, nothing. And then I've told a story for no reason. It cheapens my life and my experience, because the Black experience is very beautiful and has so many facets and so many things to it that's more than just tragedy, playing sports, dancing well, and cooking good food. So why can't I show that however I want, as big or as little as it needs to be in that moment based on the story I'm trying to tell?
I love what you said, Alyssa, about working with these institutions and trying to go against the grain of what they're what they want. I was trying to look for more grants yesterday, and I kind of like did a mini rant on my Instagram story, and I posed a question: am I out of line for being upset that every grant that I'm running to is only about social justice? And I was surprised by like all the DMs I got. It's like, yes, I'm so upset. Like, this is all I'm getting like too, as my group, like all the grants are requiring us to only talk about this certain topic. And I came to a conclusion with one person: by always boxing us into this certain topic, you're actually slowing our growth as filmmakers, because our white counterparts who can self-fund them, like their short films, and they're constantly coming up with more content and curating, and they're almost like getting to the door faster than us, because we're waiting for this one grant, or like a few grants that are only to a certain topic, and we're not growing and we're not diversifying our portfolio. They accidentally created the problem by only filtering us through this lens, and because their goal is to like get more diverse voice into the industry, but ultimately you've made us focus on like one singular story, and none of us are any different. Like, you're kind of also like not making us as filmmakers, you're not making us different from the other person.
It's intentionally done like this in order to keep us from being able to do anything. I feel like it's a form of gatekeeping, and I have zero patience for it. And I think that it's extremely limiting. And like, I applied for a grant with the US Embassy that we've just found out we didn't get. And so I was writing about like why, like what the issue was. And then there's another fund that's in the Netherlands, which is like everyone knows the Netherlands has money, but it's problematic because all of their funding and all of their support goes based on trends of oppression or refugees or whatever they want to talk about. So they've changed the perspective of their grants for the year, where they were like, we're now focusing on Indians, people from the Caribbean, Latin America, and this is it. And then the year before, it was like Asian countries. And then the year before, it was someone else. But like, if you don't get that grant the first time, and they're changing the people they allow to apply for this grant every single year, and you don't fit the category of who's oppressed enough to apply for funding, how the hell are you ever supposed to make anything? Because these fundings are supposed to happen over a long period of time. Yeah, it's like trial and error, but when you're only allowed to apply based on the social justice of who's the most oppressed in that moment, look around, we're all oppressed all the time. I'm not less oppressed in 2019 than I was today. And like there should be funding and support out there for artists who have specific perspectives to offer, without it only getting taken by white artists because they have more resources to apply in a way that fits their categories. They should be aware of the types of people that are applying for funding, their cultural backgrounds and where they're coming from, and working to accommodate us. Why are we constantly trying to accommodate people who don't even know what it's like? They're just checking off a list of boxes, probably based on a Netflix documentary that they watched.
Also, these funders want to say, like, look what we did. We supported this group this year. But really, as you were saying, Alyssa, the success of funding a group is giving them multi-year support. So if you give someone a grant for 1 year and then say, see ya, good luck with the rest of it, that's not really support. That's more beneficial to the funder, who's like, look who I supported and look who I'm supporting next year. I've supported 40 groups, but really it's like, you should support 5 artists and make sure that they're getting support through their career and through their growth and development because you genuinely support them. Something that you said, Alyssa, last time we were talking a little bit about like trauma porn. And I was thinking about that when Chinwe, you were talking about funders wanting a social justice or racial justice component in the work of POC creators. And I think that is like, I think that's because white funders want to learn about the experience. But Alyssa, you were saying like, we've been suffering for 400 years. Like there's plenty that you can look at. Like, we don't need to be telling you this story now. We need to be creating art for our communities.
Oftentimes, artists of color are really pigeonholed into the art that we are funded to make or granted to make. And a lot of white artists aren't. And so they have like a white artist, a white slam poet, like say specifically, can talk about anything, you know, and it's almost like a bonus if a white poet gets on stage and they talk about race. Versus like as a Black artist, I feel like the audience is more surprised if I get on stage and I don't talk about race, if I talk about love, if I talk about mental health. That is kind of like the lens that they're expecting of me. And it does absolutely limit what we envision for ourselves, I think. I don't necessarily feel like I have to write poems about race, but when I do, I notice that those poems tend to score better or they seem to resonate more. And that there's a whole lot of issues with that. You know, a white artist might argue that that's like an unfair advantage that I have. But when it comes to like getting paid for your art, there is a severe disadvantage for artists of color because the kind of art that we are funded to make or granted to make is whatever hot topic happens to be right now. And right now in America specifically, that's race. So if you want to get funded, you have to talk about some kind of disparity, some kind of prejudice, and then you'll get your grant. That does limit, and that we're going to see the results of that kind of limitation play out over the next couple of decades when all of these white artists continue to get permission or funding to do whatever they want to do, and we're still telling the same stories.
This reminds me of like recently I was really bored and I like this podcast Still Processing, and they did a watch along of Catwoman. He was talking about the time of which this was made, and it was like Halle Berry had just won the Academy Award and she was this first Black woman and her career was all ahead of her and she wanted to do something and take on something that was super new and popular at the time, and they were so eager to like throw her under the bus. The movie was horrible, but also there are so many bad movies, and it was so interesting why it was bad and why it was handled the way it was. I see so many movies, like especially now, there's so many things that are being put out there rapidly. Like not all of them are good. It's okay that sometimes things have bad content, but we should be allowed to make things that are bad without it detrimenting our career. We should be allowed to make things that have no meaning. We should be allowed to make things that are data or experimental. I want to see more artists of color being able to do these kinds of things and not always have to present it like through or do it and then go to a lens of trauma or a lens of having to talk about social justice. We would actually be able to reach a point where we don't have to talk about it if people would give us the space to have any social justice. But if we're always talking about not having it, how will we ever get to a point where we don't need to talk about it?
We should be able to do what we want and present it how we want. And I'm thinking about the kids that I work with, and I work with them and they write poetry, and they're teaching them how to develop their voices. That's what we like to call it. And they have a monthly newsletter that the kids like edit and produce, and they pick a poem. And for the last like few months, the poems have all been about race and how unfair it is and how my skin is this and how my skin is that. And it's like, these are kids. While I feel like it's important to keep that in mind, it's also ridiculous that we have to be in that frame of mind. And we also are teaching that to another generation, so they are in that frame of mind as well.
It's almost like we create our own genre accidentally, like as a whole, Black people have their own genre, and it's something with trauma based, and that's not good. That's not good. We don't all have to be Black excellence. We can just be Black okay.
I hear y'all making this good point that white creators tend to have this license to make anything that they want to, represent any voice that they want to, and I can definitely attest to seeing so many dance shows, particularly when I lived in San Francisco, that I had no idea what they were about. It didn't even like feel like they were for the audience. It felt like it was more like for the creative process for the artist. And I definitely think that creators of color deserve that same license too, because we have to have experiences and processes like that to develop as artists. So what do you think needs to happen for Black artists to have the same creative license as white artists?
What we really need is spaces that are not necessarily only, like, it doesn't have to be only for Black people. Like, this isn't an only Black issue. I live in a different country, and I see people I work with people who are Russian, South Korean. I'm the only Black one because I live in the Czech Republic. That's my choice. But if there's like Mexicans, people from all over the place, and they all feel this gap, this need. And I have a friend who's Bosnian, and we work together, and we're like, you know what? Honestly, we need to make a space where we can at least produce things for people, or like provide a space, or help people find space where we don't even need to operate within the system. Like, of course, you have to use that system or find a way to work within that institution. But when you have a support system that's hell-bent on making that space for people, it makes it so much easier, because then even if you have like one person presenting a work in progress, and then there's going to be a bunch of white people in the audience from the like traditional institution that's going to come and look at it, and then you have more people coming that are forcing a conversation and a dialogue about what's being made or about what's happening there, then you have to force them not to to look at it and deal with it and see it as valid, and having as many people as possible to be able to say, maybe you don't think it's good or you don't think it's theater, but there's 20 people here who do. So now we should discuss it. And you need to explain why you don't think it's good. And if it's because it's just not seen as quality enough, what is quality and why do you think it's bad? Or why do you think it can only be like this?
I was thinking about just movies that are able to get greenlit, and that stars like people of color. And then usually it's only being able to get greenlit is when somebody who's in the decision board that looks like them. I'm thinking about Judas and Black Messiah, the movie. They traveled through so many studios, having a package deal with Lakeith Stanfield, who's already like at his career, he's a big name now. They had all this package deal already. Like they did, and then they also had like an investment company called Macro, who was willing to pay 50% of the production costs. So they did all the hard work for these studios. So like now just all you gotta do is greenlit it for us, give us half the money and then give us a marketing budget. And all studios said no, except for Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers, because Warner Brothers had multiple Black people as executives, like about 3 Black executives who were like, yeah, we need this movie. But it usually just come down to the representation of people in the leadership. If they're Black, likely they're going to see more of it. They can't just be one Black person, because that one Black person is going to feel that pressure of like, this better be really good. But the fact that Warner Brothers had more than one Black person, and all them came from different backgrounds. It's like, yeah, this is a good film. This is a good concept. We should greenlit it, and we should put our energy behind it. And as it turned out, Daniel Kaluuya has an Oscar because of that person or there was multiple people who just said yes to it.
The idea of an okay an okay Black or Black okay. It's got to, like, it only comes from a foundation that other people are willing to accept just the Black experience in general, versus like it has to be Black excellence, it has to be Black power, it has to be Black encouragement, and that, I think that only happens if you're willing to spend time in spaces where people are just being people. And a lot of times that's not the case, especially when when it comes to like being in the room with the decision makers. So much of that is about a bottom line versus telling a story that people can relate to. What Chinwe was saying, like, there are more people of color on the boards making the decisions. It won't be okay for there just to be this wonderful movie about people of color living their lives, because they're always going to think about the bottom line, and the people that they think are going to go watch those movies are going to be people that look like them. And if there are no people that look like us in those rooms, that's not going to get greenlit. And so I think, like, fundamentally, it has to come from people really wanting to hear stories of other walks of life and valuing not just our struggle, but the beauty that we bring to that life as well.
I've been recently trying to like be more honest about what I think about things, or how I talk about things, especially that involve race, because I meet a lot of people here. Like when This Is America came out, I was like, everyone came up to me in Prague and they were like, have you seen this? And I'm like, yep, don't want to talk about it. And like now people are starting to watch more movies. I'm sometimes one of the first Black people have met, like Black American, because there's not a lot of Black Americans that live in Europe for multiple reasons, of which it's hard to explain to Europeans. But when they ask me about movies, especially, they're like, have you seen this one? Or have you seen this? Or have you watched that? And sometimes I have to say no. And they're like, why not? And I'm like, it's not for me. It's not for me. It's for you. Like, I have zero reason to watch that movie. I watched a clip on Netflix. What is it? Strong Black Lead today from Moesha. It was just people existing, and you have that one cousin of a cousin or whatever that comes in. And I really miss that. Like, just feeling okay to exist without constantly feeling like there's a target on your back, not only by the things that are presented to you or by your society, but also by the institutions you're supposed to get support from. Because then the target isn't like that they're trying to kill you, it's such that they're trying to use you, but also give you as little support as possible, even when they have the resources and the time. They just don't want to, because they don't feel like you're worth that amount, and they will always try to pay you less.
And not only have those spaces where we can be just Black and happy on TV, but also have that ability to have that translate into other spaces. And it is going to take the people in power giving themselves permission to see us outside that lens, because I also feel like that's a misconceived perception. You see my skin, you automatically know what I'm doing, the content of my character and everything else. But you need to give yourself permission to have the humility to actually see me as a person. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in whole, but it is going to, that's a good place to start.
Something just clicked to me when you were speaking, Amber, about it's almost like when you see my Black skin, you have already assumed what I'm about, my story. It's like being pulled over by a police officer. You already assume that I'm in trouble for something that unrelated to what's what the event is. It's almost like how, like in the art system, is that when they see a Black voice, they already put all this thing on us, and then it's like, then we're representing the whole entire group, the whole entire community. It's almost a weird liberal racism, like they're doing to us. And not only unbeknownst to them, I don't think they're cognizant knowing that that act is racist by limiting us in a way, by putting us in a box, by saying that you're now representing this entire Black community. And as we're all speaking, there's four of us, and we're all having different experiences. There's no way that I can write a story that says this represents all the Black people that is in this room right now. And I don't know, that just clicked on me when you just said that, Amber. I was like, yeah, this is still a form of racism that the art institution is doing, and they think they're doing us a favor by like giving us a platform, but they're giving us a platform with criterias.
I've been thinking a lot about the other side of that too, in which like the shows and things that do actually bring this stuff up are often met with backlash, because like specifically right now, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier tackles this idea of like what happens when we have a Black Captain America. And so a lot of the backlash that they're getting right now is that, why does our superhero movies have to have like this social justice element to it? Why can't it just be about him being just him? He's now the Captain America. And then it's just so interesting to kind of read like all of the dialogue around this and being like, no, it would never be that way, because even though this is a fictional story, he is a Black Captain America. There is so much baggage that comes with that. We can't tell this story and have it be authentic to where we are right now without actually coming and talking about the social justice aspects of this. And I see the pros and the cons of both sides of this. I do appreciate like Marvel is talking about these issues, and they didn't just like put a Black man in the Captain America outfit and move on. But at the same time, we are constantly getting kind of pigeonholed into these ideas or roles, and we don't necessarily get to tell the story the way that we want to tell it. That's not how I would tell. That's the way that Marvel did this show is not necessarily how I would tell that story. It's an interesting take on it, but they do shy away from a lot of like the nitty gritty of it. And when I think of like what good art does, and that good art can change things and get us to see the world around us in a different lens, I'm grateful if there are shows like this, but I don't want to have to continue to produce art this way so that people will watch it or enjoy it. I feel like there's like a formula to how Hollywood specifically wants Black social justice art to be delivered, and if you don't fit that formula, you don't get funded, or you don't get like the stage presence that you would otherwise get if you weren't a person of color.
I don't watch a lot of Marvel comics, but none of this is real, right? This is not set in reality. So I think I think the frustration of that is like, I watched Game of Thrones, and I remember like the dialogue about like when Black people were like, why aren't there Black people on Game of Thrones? And then the creators were like, well, it's set in this is about the European dynasty. And I'm like, but there's dragons in here. So I like, none of this is making sense. Like you can expand your imagination and add dragons and all this crazy like magic, but Black people can't exist in here. And then eventually they did add Black people, but they're like racially ambiguous Black people. That's fine, whatever. But but the content is what I'm trying to say is that these are fantasies. So we don't have to like, we can expand our imagination and like remove the social justice angle of it. There's ways you can filter political dialogue through it, but at the end of the day, it's supposed to be fantasy. We can expand our imagination.
What I find interesting about the conversation is like, I don't live in the US anymore. We have a person in Dallas, like we're not covering everything, but like all of us are coming from different experiences. I'm not insane. I'm not going to dive in and try and tackle the entirety of the Black experience ever. That's exhausting to do. And you don't have to touch on these things. Or you say that like you want to include people of color in new shows, And then I'm watching Shadow and Bone, and there's like this, they replaced one of the characters to be like half Asian because it takes place in a version of Russia. And then every single episode, because they hate her because she's from some warring state that they never reference. And then every episode, they're like, you should make your eyes less slitty. And I'm like, wow, I didn't need that extreme racism to illustrate how racist these Russians are in this fantasy show that I'm trying to watch on Netflix with a person I don't know if I'm dating or not. Like, I just wanted to know if I was Netflix and chilling or gonna eat a sandwich. And now I'm sitting here listening to this, people tell this woman to be less slitty-eyed and like chasing her through town. Why?
There's this phrase that like art imitates life. And I think, at least currently, that there's like Marvel's doing a pretty good example of this, in that they have now 2 shows for their like TV shows for their little world. And the first show they introduce is about a white woman with superpowers who spends that entire like 10 episode series battling with her grief of losing the person that she loves. That she gets 10 episodes to kind of deal with grief. And I think they kind of deal with Sam's grief of losing his best friend in like 1 episode. The rest is about like him being Black as Captain America. And I think that's a really good imitation of where we are right now with like the world of art, is that you can be Black and successful as an artist if you talk about these things. Whereas if you happen to be a white artist, you have free range to talk about any subject that you want to talk about. And that's frustrating.
I mean, you're right about how it imitates life, because I think that is what society does put on us. It's almost like when dealing with mental health with Black people, or well, I guess with me, I'll speak for myself, it's like you just put a Band-Aid on it because you have to deal with other things about it.
When you keep talking about like 10 episodes of addressing a white woman's grief, there's so much space for white women to talk about their feelings, and they like asking for space for it, which is something that I like living here. It took me a minute. Like, I've been having conversations with people I work with here, and they're always like, you don't think about like my feelings, or like, you're not giving space to me. And I was like, this is something, I'm in Europe now. I understand. I see like how this is being prioritized, like why women here behave that way. But the most radical thing you could do is shift that conversation about feelings and depth and emotion and trauma to other groups that are experiencing it. Like, what would benefit a Black boy more? Talking about getting alone, or watching Captain America go through a tale of grief and loss and dealing with his feelings and talking about them? I used to work with kids in Austin, and I worked with a lot of Black and brown kids, and they don't know how, and they don't have any role models that they watch on TV that show them how. This is the perfect venue to do that. Like, this is what they need, because otherwise you just stay in a cycle of the same all the time.
A lot of this conversation has gone in the direction of, why do we have to talk about social or racial justice, and we shouldn't have to. And I think that that's completely true and valid. But I also know that some creators in this room do choose to make social and racial justice art. I attended a workshop recently that basically said, it was kind of more for like the office professional sphere. And it was saying, the leader of the workshop was saying, staff of color in professional spaces are doing labor no matter what their choice is. Like, if POC staff are choosing to speak up about a racial injustice that they see in the workplace, that's labor. If they're choosing not to speak up about it, that's also labor. So relating that to the art space, does it feel to you like it's labor to choose if you're going to do a racial justice piece or intentionally not do a racial justice piece?
I think if you are a person of color, the world kind of makes it your job or your responsibility to know how discriminated against you are, how prejudiced the world can be. I choose to do social justice art because I want to see change. And that's the motivation for me. I don't feel like I have to. I know that there are artists, though, that definitely do feel like they have to, or their art won't get heard. I think I've been very fortunate in that some of the other poems that I've written that happen to be about love or mental health have also gotten traction. But I don't take for granted that a lot of people that may be watching this poem are viewing it because here's a Black man talking about mental health. That's unique, or that's different, or that's kind of cool. I do appreciate that there's still, regardless of whether or not that piece is about social justice, there's going to be probably some lens that they're viewing that through. But me personally, I want to see change. I want there to be a realm of art where Black artists or artists of color are just creating the art they want to create, and they are getting funded to do that. That is like, that's the North Star. That's the ultimate goal, but we're not currently in that space right now. And so I create I'm constantly inspired by world events. I'm constantly inspired by my own experiences. And I use those experiences to write about what I see and the kind of change that I want to see. Thankfully, I don't feel like I have to. My customer base is basically a lot of like private schools that want to hear a Black artist talk about social justice, or a Black artist talk about love or mental health. My customer base kind of like is open to me talking about other things, but I know a lot of artists and poets specifically who get pigeonholed by that, and I don't think that that's ultimately what a trend I would like to buck. I just in the process of bucking that trend, I do write social justice art and want to see some kind of positive change.
If I'm going to do it, there's an aspect of labor, like you said. I'm doing this for a reason, because I want this to be heard. Not like, you're not going to hear me if I don't do this, but I'm saying it for a reason, and you're listening, and I hope that you take away from it what I'm trying to say. If you don't, then that's cool too. But it's the choice of that is like, I believe in this topic. So yes, there's an aspect of labor that comes with it, but it's just, I'm saying this for this reason. And that's what motivates the choice.
I think that I like the word choice that Amber is using, because that honestly, that's the difference that I'm looking for the new path that going forward. The choice for creators of color to explore it, because it is a labor, like you also stated. For me as an artist, as a filmmaker, if I was only given the choice of only given the option to grow as a filmmaker and only talk about race, I wouldn't be a filmmaker, just because I don't have the range. And I just know for myself, I am politically active. I'm very engaged, but I wouldn't know how to properly describe the feeling that I'm having in a nuanced way without also like doing what Marvel just did. I think that would probably be the easy low-hanging fruit that I would go to. And I know as a consumer, I'm like, that's just stupid. Why would I do that? So I just think that like giving the creators the option and the choice of variety. And I do see a change happening, because you have the Issa Rae's, and thinking about just her career. And I realized when I'm watching Insecure, there's not a really specific episode that's like, this is the episode we're talking about race. This is the episode we're going to talk about Black hair. And one thing I loved about it is that she has different hairstyles at every episode, or even within an episode. And there's not a topic about, oh man, being Black and having hair is a struggle. Like there's not a conversation about that. It just this is just is, and we just move on. And then I was just thinking about how on the night of election, the 2016 election, I had already purchased tickets to see Trevor Noah for 3 days, like that Friday. I was like, oh man, I'm already feeling down. But I was expecting him to get on stage and talk about the election, and that just happened 2 days prior. And so I'm sitting in my seat, just ready to be having his whole setup for 2 hours talking about, or maybe an hour and a half talking about politics. And he did none of that. And I felt like I ruined my night, because I was waiting for him to talk about Trump. It was good that he subverted the expectation. And that's what we really want for our Black creators, subvert the expectation of what you assume that they're going to talk about, because you'll be surprised, and just erase any expectation you have. And that's what I'm trying to say.
If I was going to make something social justice related, or like with a large Black focus, it would be when I have so much money that no one can tell me what the fuck to do. I don't have the patience for anybody. I want to go the Beyonce route. I just want to be rich and Black and do whatever I want and pay all the people I want. And then I can do everything I want in the way that I want. And everyone else can go fuck off. And until then, I think for me, I would really have to feel safe. Like I would really want to do it in a way where everyone I knew was already on the same page. I could say that I want to put my hair in Bantu knots. Nobody's going to ask me what it is. I can say that I want to have something addressing something cultural, addressing something that is trauma-based. And everyone in that room, even if they're not Black or not a person of color, is aware and dedicated to the same goal. And everyone's done work and everyone is actively engaged. So I would never do it here. I would never do it here. I don't think Europeans deserve I don't think Europeans deserve the privilege of the access to the Black cultural experience in a way that they have not earned. And until they earn it, I'm not going to give it to them. I would make it at home. I would go to Austin or I would go to Houston and I would do it with people that I trust and respect, because I would want it to be safe and taken care of. I wouldn't want to put it in the hands of someone who would turn it into something else. And here, when I make work, I have a lot of freedom, but that's also like, even in that, it's because I've decided I just reject everything. And luckily the Czech Republic is a very affordable place to live. And there are residencies and people who are interested, and you have easy access to other countries. So I'm not even living here to make work for Czech people. I'm using Prague as a base so I can go other places and do work. So it's like being aware of that and knowing how that works, it changes a lot. But I think that's, for me, at least where I am right now, that's the answer. It's like, I would want to make it when I don't have to owe anybody anything. I don't have to owe anyone an explanation or a thank you or anything outside of what I feel comfortable with. And I don't want to turn around thinking I made something, look at the end result, look at how it's received, or look at what's being put out and regret it. Or I see how the people are presenting it and I feel like it's not what I wanted.
I think my call to action would be this: consider, if you are an organization that is investing in art, which you should be, all organizations I hope are investing in some form of art, consider why it is that you are wanting to invest in that specific art, especially if it's a social justice issue. If you are wanting to check a box that is not worth your artist, the artist's time, that's not respecting the artist's work and what it is that they bring to the table. So consider why it is that you are wanting to have this particular event or this particular artist to talk about this issue. And then aside from that, if you are an organization that is paying for art, you should also have funding or want to bring in artists just to be themselves, just to create the kind of art that they want to create, as well as, so that way that artist is not feeling pigeonholed, that the only way that I'm going to be able to put food on the table is to talk about this issue, versus like, actually, I can do whatever it is that I want to create and have that be appreciated, have that be valued, continue to pay my bills and live my life the way that I want to live it.
If you're an organizer, or if you're an organization that is funding art, especially towards people of color, give them space to create the art they choose. And also, the way you really see real social change is by funding these artists and letting them create the world that they want to see. Also by normalizing their experience. I mean, like, not normalizing their experience, but normalizing their existence. Like, if they're, they're in LGBT community, if they're, Asian, they're Black, they're Indigenous, it doesn't serve them well if they're always regurgitating their trauma.
Normalize being okay Black so that we can teach that to the next generation, like, so that, we can look on Netflix and actually see something Black and uplifting instead of death and destruction.
Thank you all so much for participating in this episode and being vulnerable and raw and sharing your perspectives and making me laugh until I cry. And I can't wait to share this with all of our audiences. And take care. And Thoughts That Move audience, please continue to tune into season 3 and the rest of our very juicy episodes.